the crystal spires of Kepler-4, for to be gleamed like diamonds under the gentle light of their golden sun. For 300 years, Elder Zesh had watched over his people from the highest tower of their capital city. His body was made of living crystal, clear as water, but strong as stone. Today, that strength felt like nothing more than fragile glass. Below him, the plague spread like a hungry shadow across the land. What had once been gardens of singing flowers and rivers of pure light was now a growing mass of gray metal. Nanomachines moved like a living thing, eating everything they touched and making more of themselves. Trees, buildings, even the ground itself disappeared into the hungry swarm. "How much time do we have?" Zesh asked his aide, a younger crystal being whose light flickered with fear. "The plague will reach the capital in 4 days, Elder. Maybe. Less if it keeps growing faster." Zesh closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 5 billion lives on his shoulders. The Villani had never faced anything like this. They were a peaceful people who had never known war, never known hunger, never known true danger. Their world was perfect, their neighbors kind. Their lives filled with art and music and gentle learning, but now death was coming, and they had no idea how to fight it. "Send the signal," Zesh whispered. "Send it to everyone, across the galaxy." The distress call traveled faster than light itself. It carried with it the voice of a desperate leader and the hope of a dying world. "This is Elder Zesh, of the Villani people on Kepler-4 to be. We are facing extinction. An ancient plague of machines is consuming our world. We have tried everything. We know, but nothing stops it. Please, if anyone can help us, we beg you to come. Time is running out." The message reached the Peaceful Harmony Collective first. They listened with sad hearts but shook their heads. Such a terrible thing was beyond their gentle nature. The Gentle Tide Federation received the call next, but they felt great sorrow for. The Villani but knew they had no weapons or tools to fight such a monster. One by one, the civilized species of the galaxy heard the call. One by one, they found reasons why they could not help. The plague was too dangerous. The solution too hard to find, but 23 light-years away. On a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, someone was listening. Kira Thorne sat in the quiet communication center of New Horizons Station, floating in the cold darkness between stars. She had been monitoring deep space signals for 3 years, listening to the chatter of distant worlds. Most of it was routine trade reports, weather updates, family messages traveling between colonies, but this signal was different. It cut through the usual noise like a scream in the night. Kira's hands flew over her controls, recording every word, every frequency, every piece of data she could capture. The universal translator worked quickly, turning the alien words into something she could understand. As the message played, her face grew pale. "Oh my God," she whispered, then reached for her emergency communicator. "Command, this is Kira Thorne at Listening Post 7. I've got a Priority 1 signal from outside human space. Species unknown, requesting immediate rescue assistance. They're saying their world is dying." The response came back in seconds. "Copy. That Thorne, relay all data to Earth Command immediately. Full priority." Within an hour, the signal had traveled through the human communication network, from the outer stations to the inner colonies to Earth itself. In the halls of Earth Command, Admiral Patricia Webb listened to the alien plea with growing concern. "How long do they have?" she asked her staff. "Based on the signal timestamp and their description of the plague's speed, maybe for days," replied Commander Scott Lee, the intelligence officer. "But that's assuming the plague doesn't accelerate. What about the other species? Are any of them responding?" "Negative, Admiral. Our long-range sensors show no ships moving toward the Villani system. It looks like everyone's staying away." Admiral Webb nodded slowly. She had spent 30 years in space, fighting pirates, exploring dangerous worlds, protecting human colonies from every threat the galaxy could throw at them. She had seen things that would terrify most species, but she had never heard anything as heartbreaking as that alien voice begging for help. "Get me Captain Hayes," she ordered. 2 hours later, Captain Ryan Hayes stood in the briefing room of the deep space vessel Defiant. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady brown eyes, the kind of person who had spent most of his life in dangerous places. Around him sat his senior staff, all of them listening as Admiral Webb explained the situation. "The Villani system is 18 days away at maximum speed," Webb said. "By the time you get there, they'll either be saved or dead. We don't know what. This plague is how it works, or how to stop it. For all we know, it might be dangerous to humans too." Right. Hayes looked around the room at his crew. He saw Dr. Lisa Morgan, the xenobiologist who had spent her life studying alien species. He saw Lieutenant Jake Miller, the tactical officer who had never backed down from a fight. Saw Engineer Amy Santos, who could fix anything and build solutions from spare parts and determination. "What do the other species think about us getting involved?" Hayes asked. "They think we're crazy," Webb replied with a slight smile. "The Harmony Collective sent a message saying that humans are too aggressive and might make things worse. The Gentle Tide Federation warned us that the plague is too dangerous for violent species to handle." Violent species? Dr. Morgan laughed. "We're trying to save lives. It's not how they see it," Webb said. "To them, we're the species that came from a death world. We fight each other. We eat other animals. We survive in places that would kill most life forms. They think we're dangerous monsters." Hayes stood up, his decision already made. "Maybe we are monsters compared to them. But right now, those crystal people need monsters. They need someone who knows how to fight. The mission is completely voluntary," Webb said. "I won't order anyone to risk their lives for aliens who might not even want our help." Hayes looked around the room again. One by one, his crew members nodded. Dr. Morgan spoke first. "Those people are going to die if we don't try. I didn't become a doctor to let that happen." Lieutenant Miller was next. "I've never run from a fight. Not starting now." Engineer Santos smiled. "Sounds like they need someone who can think outside the box. That's what we do best." Within 6 hours, the Defiant was loaded with supplies and racing toward the Villani system at maximum speed. The ship's crew of 200 had all volunteered for the mission, knowing they might be flying into a trap, a plague, or something worse. As they traveled through the dark between stars, Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the distant sun grow slowly brighter. Somewhere ahead, 5 billion crystal beings were counting down their last hours. Behind him, the rest of the galaxy watched and waited, probably expecting the crazy humans to fail. But Hayes had grown up on Earth, where hurricanes could level cities, where diseases could kill millions, where the very ground could shake apart buildings. He had learned that sometimes the only way to survive was to fight back, even when the odds were hopeless. The Villani didn't know it yet, but help was coming. It might not be the kind of help they expected, and it might not come in the form they wanted, but it was coming. Because sometimes, when gentle people faced impossible odds, they needed someone who understood that impossible just meant you had to try harder. The Defiant flew on through the night, carrying hope toward a dying world. The Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Villani system. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as their destination came into view. Player for to be hung in space like a jewel. But even from this distance, he could see the dark stains spreading across one side of the planet. "My God," whispered Dr. Morgan, standing beside him. "Look at how fast it's moving." The plague had grown since they received the distress signal. What had been small patches of gray metal were now vast areas of crawling machinery. The nanomachines moved like oil across the surface, eating everything in their path. "Tactical report," Hayes ordered. Lieutenant Miller checked his instruments. "No ships in the system, Captain. No defense stations. No orbital facilities. Nothing that looks like weapons or military installations." "They really are completely peaceful," Dr. Morgan said, her voice full of wonder and sadness. "They've never needed to protect themselves." Hayes activated the communication system. "This is Captain Ryan Hayes of the Earth vessel Defiant. We received your distress signal and are here to help. Please respond." The answer came quickly, but it was not what they expected. Instead of relief or gratitude, the alien voice sounded terrified. "Please stay away. We can see your ship, and it frightens us. You carry weapons of destruction. Your vessel is built for war. We ask for help, not conquest. Dr. Morgan stepped forward. Captain. Hayes nodded, and she activated her own microphone. This is Dr. Lisa Morgan. I am a healer and a student of life. We are not here to hurt you. We came to help because we heard your call for rescue. There was a long pause. Then a different voice spoke, older and calmer. I am Elder Zesh. Dr. Morgan, your people are not what we expected. The other species warned us about humans. They say you are violent and dangerous. We can be dangerous, Dr. Morgan admitted. But we are also capable of great kindness. We have traveled many days to reach you. Please, let us help. Another pause. You may approach, but slowly. Send only a small group. We're afraid of what you might do. Hayes selected a landing party of 5 people. Dr. Morgan would lead the group, along with Lieutenant Miller for protection. Engineer Santos to study the plague, and to medical technicians. They took a small shuttle down to the planet's surface, landing in a crystal garden far from the advancing plague. The Villani who met them were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. They looked like living sculptures made of clear crystal, with light flowing through their bodies like water. They moved with grace and beauty, but Hayes could see they were shaking with fear. Elder Zesh stood at the front of the group, his crystal body catching the sunlight and throwing rainbows across the ground. Behind him, dozens of other Villani watched, from a safe distance, ready to run if the humans showed any sign of aggression. Welcome to our world, Zesh said, his voice like wind chimes. Though I fear it may not be our world much longer. Dr. Morgan stepped forward slowly, her hands visible and empty. We are honored to meet you, Elder Zesh. We have come a long way to help you fight this plague. Fight?
Oh.
The word seemed to confuse the alien leader. We do not understand fighting. We have tried to reason with the machines to find a peaceful solution, but they do not listen. Lieutenant Miller couldn't help himself. You tried to reason with a plague? How do you reason with something that's trying to kill you? The Villani around Zesh stepped back in alarm. His voice had been loud and harsh by their standards, and they heard it as a threat. Please forgive. My companion, Dr. Morgan said quickly. He means no harm. We need to understand. How do you normally solve problems on your world? We discuss. We find harmony. We seek solutions that help everyone, Zesh explained. Violence is unknown to us. We have never hurt another living being. We do not even have words for many of the concepts you carry in your minds. Engineer Santos spoke up. Elder Zesh, may I ask about your defenses? How do you protect yourselves from natural disasters, dangerous animals, disease? We have no dangerous animals, Zesh replied. Our world is peaceful. Disease is rare, and when it comes, we heal it with gentle care. Natural disasters do not happen here. Our world is stable and kind. The humans exchanged glances. We were beginning to understand just how different these people were. The Villani had never faced real danger, never needed to fight for survival, never developed the instincts that kept other species alive in a hostile universe. We need to see the plague, Dr. Morgan said. Can you show us? Zesh led them to an observation platform at the edge of the Crystal City. From there, they could see the plague in the distance, a wall of gray metal that stretched across the horizon. It moved like a living thing, flowing over hills and valleys, consuming everything in its path. It started 3 weeks ago, Zesh explained. We found it in our ancient ruins, places we had forgotten. The machines were sleeping, but something woke them up. They eat everything. Plants, buildings, even the ground itself. They turn it all into more machines. Engineer Santos studied the plague through her instruments. It's incredible. The nanomachines are self-replicating and adaptive. They're learning from everything they consume, getting smarter and faster. Can you stop them? Zesh asked, hope in his voice. Maybe, Santos replied. But it won't be easy, and it won't be gentle. What do you mean? Lieutenant Miller stepped forward. Elder Zesh, to fight this plague, we might need to use methods that seem violent to you. We might need to destroy things, to use weapons, to take actions that your people would find terrible. The Villani around them stepped back in horror. Some of them made sounds like breaking glass, which Dr. Morgan realized was probably their way of expressing fear or disgust. You want to bring more violence to our world? Zesh asked. How does destruction heal destruction. Sometimes you have to cut out a cancer to save the patient, Dr. Morgan explained. Sometimes you have to burn a forest to stop a bigger fire. We don't want to hurt your world, but we might have to hurt the plague. A younger Villani stepped forward. Her crystal body was smaller than the others, and light danced through her like music. I am Crystal Singer Nim. I have been listening to your words, and I think I understand. You were saying that sometimes, to save life, we must end other life. Right, Dr. Morgan nodded. It's not something we enjoy, but sometimes it's the only way. Nim looked at her people, then back at the humans. The plague is not alive like us. It is a thing that eats life. Perhaps it is right to destroy something that destroys. Elder Zesh made a sound like wind through broken crystal. This is difficult. For us to understand, we've lived for thousands of years without violence. The thought of causing destruction, even to save ourselves, goes against everything we are. Understand? Dr. Morgan said gently. But Elder Zesh, your people are going to die if we don't act. All of them. Is preserving your peaceful nature worth the lives of 5 billion Villani? The question hung in the air like poison. Zesh looked at his people, then at the advancing plague, then back at the humans. These strange, violent beings had traveled across the galaxy to help them. They offered salvation, but at a price that seemed almost too high to pay. Show us what you would do, he said finally. Show us your solutions. We will try to understand. As the humans began to explain their plans, more Villani gathered to listen. Some were horrified by the talk of weapons and destruction. Others, like Nim, seemed fascinated by these new ideas. For the first time in their peaceful history, the Villani were being forced to consider that sometimes survival required actions that went against their gentle nature. The plague continued to advance, eating away at their world while they struggled. To understand the concept of fighting back, time was running out. They had to decide whether to die peacefully or live violently. It was the hardest choice they had ever faced. Engineer Amy Santos stood in the Villani laboratory, surrounded by crystal equipment she barely understood. Her human tools looked crude and ugly next to the elegant alien instruments, but she needed both to solve the plague problem around her. A dozen Villani scientists watched in fascination and horror as she worked. The nanomachines are impressive, she explained to Elder Zesh, who had come to see her progress. They adapt quickly and learn from everything they consume. But they have a weakness. What weakness? Asked Crystal Singer Neem, who had become the most eager student of human methods. Santos held up a small sample of the plague in a containment field. The gray metal writhed and twisted, trying to escape. They're designed to consume and replicate, but they're not designed to fight. They've never had to defend themselves against something that fights back. I do not understand, Zesh said. What could fight such a thing? Out. Santos smiled and pulled out a small container from her equipment. Inside was a culture of bacteria from Earth, specially modified during the journey. On our world, we have tiny life forms that eat metal. They're called metal-eating bacteria. I've changed them to make them even hungrier and more aggressive. The Villani around her stepped back in alarm. The idea of using one dangerous thing to fight another was terrifying. To them, you want to release another plague? Zesh asked, his crystal body flickering with distress. Not a plague, Santos corrected. A cure. These bacteria will only eat the nanomachines. When all the machines are gone, the bacteria will die because they'll have nothing left to eat. Dr. Morgan joined the group, carrying her own equipment. It's like using one disease to fight another. On Earth, we call it biological warfare. But in this case, it's biological healing. This is madness, whispered one of the Villani scientists. You speak of war and fighting and disease as if they were tools. They are tools, Lieutenant Miller said, entering the laboratory. On our world, everything is a tool if you know how to use it. Fire can burn down your house, but it can also keep you warm. Water can drown you, but it can also give you life. The same thing that kills can also save. Crystal Singer Nim moved closer to Santos's workstation. Show me how this works. Santos activated a small demonstration. In a sealed container, she released a tiny amount of the bacteria onto a sample of the plague. The nanomachines immediately began to dissolve as the bacteria consumed them. Amazing, Nim breathed. The tiny life forms are eating the machines. That's right, Santos said. But this is just the first step. We need to create barriers to stop the plague from spreading while the bacteria work. What kind of barriers? Zesh asked. Lieutenant Miller stepped forward. We need to create dead zones, areas where the plague cannot survive. On Earth, we call them fire breaks. Fire! The word made every Villani in the room shudder. Not exactly fire, Miller explained, but we need to destroy everything in a line. Around the plague, remove all the material it can eat. Create a barrier it cannot cross. Dr. Morgan pulled up a holographic map of the planet. We would need to evacuate about 50,000 Villani from this area, she said, pointing to a region ahead of the plague. Then we destroy everything in a strip about 10 kilometers wide. Destroy? Zisha's voice was barely a whisper.
Ow.
You want us to destroy our own cities, our own lands? To save the rest of the planet, Dr. Morgan said gently, like cutting off an infected limb to save the body. We have never destroyed anything, Zesh said. We are builders, creators, make beautiful things, not destroy them. Nim looked at the advancing plague on the map, then at her people. Elder Zesh, if we do nothing, the plague will destroy everything anyway. At least this way we save most of our world. But the people who live in those cities, another Villani said, where will they go? We evacuate them first, Dr. Morgan explained. We move them to safe areas. No one has to die. Santos continued working while the Villani debated. She had created enough bacteria to treat a small area, but scaling it up would take time. Time they did not have. There's another problem, she announced. The bacteria work, but they work slowly. The plague is moving faster than the bacteria can consume it. We need to slow down the plague first. How do we do that? Nim asked. Lieutenant Miller looked uncomfortable. We bomb it. The silence in the laboratory was deafening. Even Nim stepped back from the humans. You want to drop bombs on our world? Zesh asked, his voice shaking. Not bombs that hurt people, Miller said quickly. Electro bombs that create electromagnetic pulses. They would confuse the nanomachines, make them stop moving temporarily. It would give the bacteria time to work. Electromagnetic pulses. Santos nodded. That could work. The nanomachines use electrical signals to coordinate. If we disrupt those signals, they'll become confused and disorganized. Dr. Morgan saw the fear in the Villani faces. Think of it like a lightning storm. Lightning is violent and destructive, but it's also natural. After a storm, the air is clean and the earth is refreshed. Lightning is natural, Zesh said slowly, but bombs are not. On our world, humans learn to make artificial lightning, Santos explained. We learn to control it, to use it for good purposes. The same power that can destroy can also heal. Nim had been quiet, thinking hard. Finally, she spoke. I want to see this artificial lightning. I want to understand how destruction can become healing. Santos looked at Lieutenant Miller, who nodded. He activated a small device that created a brief electromagnetic pulse. The lights in the laboratory flickered, and several of the more sensitive Villani instruments shut down temporarily. The pulse disrupted the electrical systems, Miller explained. But see, the lights came back on. The equipment restarted. The disruption was temporary, not permanent. And this would stop the plague? Nim asked. 8. Long enough for the bacteria to work? Santos confirmed. But we need to act quickly. The plague is learning and adapting. If we wait too long, it might become immune to our methods. Elder Zesh looked at his people, then at the humans. If we agreed to this plan, how many of our cities would be destroyed? 12 cities in the barrier zone, Dr. Morgan said. But we saved the remaining 300 cities and 5 billion lives. And you are certain this will work? Nothing is certain, Santos admitted. But it's our best chance. On Earth, we have a saying. Sometimes you have to risk everything too. Save everything. The Villani discussed among themselves in their musical language, voices rising and falling like crystal bells. Finally, Zesh turned back to the humans. "This is the hardest decision our people have ever faced," he said. "We have lived for thousands of years without violence, without destruction. But now we must choose between our peaceful nature and our survival." "What do you choose?" Dr. Morgan asked softly. "Choose to live," Zesh said. "We choose to trust that you can turn destruction into healing, but we ask that you teach us. We want to understand how you think, how you solve problems that seem impossible." Nim stepped forward. "I want to help. I want to learn your ways of fighting." "It's dangerous," Miller warned. "You might be hurt." "Then I will be hurt," Nim said, with surprising strength. "That I will not let my people die, because we were too afraid to fight." Santos began preparing the bacteria for large-scale production. Miller started planning the electromagnetic pulse attacks. Dr. Morgan worked on evacuation procedures for the threatened cities. For the first time since the plague began, there was hope. It was not the gentle hope the Villani were used to, but a fierce, determined hope born from the willingness to fight back. The battle for their world was about to begin. The evacuation began at dawn. Thousands of Villani moved through the crystal cities like living light, carrying their most precious belongings as they fled their homes. Captain Hayes watched from the command center they had set up in the capital, his heart heavy at the sight of so much fear and sadness. "The electromagnetic pulse devices are ready," Lieutenant Miller reported. "We have 12 units positioned around the plague zone. We'll hit the nanomachines from all directions." "Want the bacteria?" Hayes asked. Engineer Santos looked up from her workstation. "Production is at 90%. We'll have enough to treat the entire infected area within 6 hours." "The firebreak construction is ahead of schedule," Dr. Morgan added. "The Villani are working faster than we expected. They really want to save their world." Hayes nodded, but his expression was troubled. Through the window, he could see the plague in the distance. It had grown again overnight, and something about its movement looked different, more organized, more purposeful. Captain called one of the Villani technicians they had trained to use human equipment. "We're getting strange readings from the plague area." Hayes hurried to the monitoring station. The screens showed the nanomachini swarm, but the patterns were changing. Instead of the random eating and spreading they had seen before, the machines were forming structures. Complex, organized structures. "What are we looking at?" Hayes asked. Santos studied the data. "It's adapting faster than we thought. The nanomachines are learning from everything they've consumed. They're becoming more intelligent." "How much more intelligent?" "I don't know, but look at this." Santos pointed to a section of the display. "They're building something. Some kind of central control system." Crystal Singer Nim entered the command center, her crystal body dim with exhaustion. She had been working with the human teams for days, learning their methods and helping coordinate with her people. "Elder Zesh wants to know if we should continue the evacuation," she said. "Many of our people are asking if this plan will still work." Hayes looked at the data again. The plague was definitely becoming smarter. Their simple plan of electromagnetic pulses and bacteria might not be enough anymore. "Santos, how long before the nanomachines become too smart for our methods?" "At this rate, maybe 12 hours, maybe less. And we attack now," Hayes decided. "Miller, initiate the electromagnetic pulse sequence." Santos released the bacteria as soon as the pulses hit. Captain Dr. Morgan said quietly, "If this doesn't work, we're going to need a backup plan." "What kind of backup plan?" "A more direct approach. We might need to go into the plague zone itself and destroy whatever control system they're building." The thought made Nim's crystal body flicker with fear. "You would go into the plague?" "That's suicide," maybe Hayes said. "But if we don't stop this thing now, it'll spread to other worlds. This won't just be about saving your people anymore. It'll be about saving the galaxy." The electromagnetic pulse attack began at exactly noon. 12 devices fired simultaneously, sending invisible waves of energy into the plague zone. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The nanomachines, which had been moving in organized patterns, suddenly became confused and chaotic. They clumped together, scattered apart, and moved in random directions. "It's working," Santos shouted. "The coordination is broken. Release the bacteria now." Hundreds of drone ships carried the modified bacteria into the plague zone. The tiny organisms spread quickly, hungry for the metal of the nanomachines. Within minutes, sections of the plague began to dissolve as the bacteria consumed them. But the victory was short-lived. After 2 hours, the nanomachines began to adapt again. They learned to avoid the bacteria. They developed resistance to the electromagnetic pulses. Worst of all, they began to rebuild their control system, this time making it stronger and more protected. Bacteria are losing effectiveness, Santos reported. The nanomachines are adapting too quickly. And the pulses are having less effect each time, Miller added. They're learning to shield themselves. Hayes made a decision that would change everything. I'm calling for reinforcements. We need more firepower and more options.
Captain.
Dr. Morgan said, by the time reinforcements arrive, it might be too late, and we'll have to slow this thing down ourselves. Hayes turned to his communication officer, sent a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need immediate support, and prepare a strike team. The reinforcements arrived 18 hours later. 3 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, bringing military specialists and advanced weapons. Colonel Janet Wright took command of the planetary defense, while Dr. Ben Carter began analyzing the plague's new adaptations. The situation is worse than we thought, Dr. Carter reported after studying the data. The nanomachines have created a central intelligence. It's learning from every attack we make and developing countermeasures. Where is this central intelligence located? Hayes asked. Deep underground, about 50 kilometers into the planet's core. It's using the planet's natural energy systems to power itself. Crystal Singer Nim, who had been listening to the briefing, stepped forward. I know those deep places. They are the old sacred sites where our ancestors first grew from the crystal heart of the world. The passages are narrow and dangerous. Only Villani can navigate them safely.
Oh, are you volunteering?
Colonel Wright asked.
Yes.
Nim said without hesitation. My people are dying. If I can guide you to this central intelligence, I will do it. It's too dangerous, Dr. Morgan protested. You're not trained for combat. Then train me, Nim replied. Teach me to fight like a human. Hayes looked at the young Villani, seeing determination in her crystalline features. Nim, if you come with us, you might be killed. Are you sure about this? Captain Hayes, you came across the galaxy to save people you had never met. You risked your lives for strangers. How can I do less for my own world? The mission team was assembled quickly. Sergeant Kevin Ross would lead the military specialists. Dr. Helen Price would handle the technical aspects of destroying the central intelligence. Nim would guide them through the underground passages. Hayes insisted on going himself, despite the protests of his crew. The passages are too narrow for your large equipment, Nim explained as they prepared to descend. We must go lightly armed and move quickly. The deeper we go, the more dangerous it becomes. Dangerous how? Sergeant Ross asked. The old places are full of energy, pure crystal energy that can burn through metal and flesh. Your bodies are not made for such places, but yours are. I am made of crystal. I can survive where you cannot. But I cannot fight the way you can. We need each other. The descent began at midnight. The team of 6 humans and 1 Villani lowered themselves into a crystal cave that sparkled with natural light.
Yes.
As they went deeper, the walls began to glow with their own energy, and the air itself seemed to hum with power. The nanomachines will be stronger down here, Dr. Price warned. They're using the planet's energy to enhance themselves, and we better move fast, Hayes said. They traveled through passages that seemed to have been carved by natural forces, following crystal formations that grew like frozen lightning through the rock. Nim led them with confidence, a crystal body glowing brighter as they descended. After hours of climbing and crawling through narrow spaces, they finally reached the central chamber. What they found there made them stop in amazement and horror. The nanomachines had built a massive structure in the heart of the planet, a towering spire of metal and crystal that pulsed with stolen energy. It was beautiful and terrible, a perversion of Villani crystal art turned into an instrument of destruction. There, Nim whispered, pointing to the base of the spire. That's where we need to plant the charges. Let's finish this, Hayes said, and they moved forward to face the final battle. The central spire pulsed with stolen energy, its metal surface covered in patterns that hurt to look at. Captain Hayes crouched behind a crystal formation with his team, studying the massive structure that the nanomachines had built in the heart of the planet. The charges need to be placed at the base, Dr. Price whispered, checking her explosives. But there are nanomachine guards everywhere. Sergeant Ross peered through his scope. I count at least 50 mobile units. They're bigger than the ones on the surface, stronger too. Crystal Singer Nim's body glowed brighter as she absorbed energy from the surrounding crystals. The spire is using my world's life force to power itself. It's like a parasite feeding on the planet's heart. Can you disrupt that connection? Hayes asked. Maybe, but I would need to get very close to the spire, and the nanomachines will try to stop me. Then we make sure they can't, Hayes decided. Ross Price set up a diversion on the far side. Draw as many guards as possible away from the base. Nim and I will plant the charges. Captain, with respect, you should let me handle the technical work, Dr. Price said. You're needed to coordinate the mission. No, Hayes replied firmly. Nim saved our lives getting us down here. I'm not letting her face this alone. The team split up. Ross and Price moved to the far side of the chamber, where they began setting small explosive charges to create noise and confusion. The nanomachine guards immediately responded, flowing toward the disturbance like liquid metal. Hayes and Nim sprinted toward the base of the spire. The remaining guards spotted them and gave chase, their metal bodies changing shape as they moved, forming weapons and tools designed to kill. They're learning from everything they see, Nim observed as they ran. They're copying human military tactics. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are, Hayes said, firing his weapon at the nearest guard. The energy blast scattered the nanomachines temporarily, but they quickly reformed and continued their pursuit. They reached the base of the spire just as the first guard caught up to them. Hayes spun around, firing continuously while Nim began placing the explosive charges at key structural points. The spire is fighting back, Nim called out. It's sending energy pulses through the crystal network. It's trying to overload my body. Hayes could see her crystal form flickering as deadly energy coursed through her. Can you hold on? I must, she said through gritted teeth. My people are depending on us. More guards arrived, forcing Hayes to focus entirely on defense. His weapon grew hot from constant firing, and he was running low on ammunition. The nanomachines seemed endless, flowing toward them like a metal tide. Charges are set, Nim announced. But I need 30 seconds to activate the timer. You've got it, Hayes said. Though he wasn't sure how he could hold off so many enemies with so little ammunition left, that's when Sergeant Laus's voice crackled over the radio. Captain, we've got a problem. The spire is adapting to our explosives. It's creating countermeasures. What kind of countermeasures? It's generating an energy field that will neutralize our charges. We need a different approach. Hayes looked at Nim, who was still struggling with the timer mechanism while deadly. Energy pulsed through her body. What other options do we have? The spire needs the planet's energy to survive, Nim said weakly. If we can overload it, make it take too much energy too quickly, it might destroy itself. How do we do that? I can channel the planet's full energy through my body into the spire. But the energy will be too much for both of us. The spire will be destroyed, but No, Hayes said immediately. There has to be another way. There's no other way, Nim replied. This is what my people do. We give ourselves to save others. It's not violence, it's sacrifice. Around them, the nanomachine guards were regrouping for another attack. Hayes's weapon was nearly empty, and Ross and Price were trapped on the far side of the chamber. You don't have to do this, Hayes said. We can find another solution. Captain Hayes, you taught me that sometimes we must fight to protect the things we love. This is my fight. This is my choice. Before Hayes could stop her, Nim placed her hands on the base of the spire and began channeling energy. Her crystal body blazed with light as the planet's full power flowed through her. The spire began to pulse faster, its metal surface glowing red with heat. The energy feedback is working, Dr. Price reported over the radio. The spire is overloading, but the energy surge is affecting the whole chamber. We need to get out of. Here, Hayes grabbed Nim's arm. Come on, we're leaving. I cannot stop now, Nim said, her voice filled with pain. If I let go, the spire will stabilize. The plague will spread to other worlds, then we'll all die together, Hayes said, taking position beside her. Ross, Price, get out of here. That's an order. Negative, Captain, Ross replied. We don't leave people behind. The four humans formed a protective circle around Nim as she continued channeling energy into the spire. The Nanomacini guards attacked in waves, but the humans fought with the desperation of people who knew they were buying time with their lives. Hayes's weapon ran empty, so he drew his combat knife. Ross threw his last grenades. Price used her tools as weapons. They fought with everything they had while Nim poured her life force into destroying the plague's heart. The spire began to crack. Metal fragments fell from its surface as the overloaded energy tore it apart from within. The Nanomacini guards stopped their attack and began retreating, their connection to the central intelligence failing. It's working, Nim gasped. The spire is collapsing. The plague is dying. Are you okay? Hayes asked. I am hurt, but I will survive. The planet's energy heals as well as destroys. The spire gave one final pulse of light, then collapsed in on itself. The sound was like a mountain falling, echoing through the crystal chambers. Above them, they could hear the Nanomacini plague on the surface, grinding to a halt as its controlling intelligence died. The journey back to the surface took hours. Nim was weak from channeling so much energy, but she was alive, exhausted and injured. But they had accomplished their mission. When they finally emerged from the underground passages, they found a world transformed. The gray metal plague was dissolving, eaten away by the modified bacteria that could finally do their work without interference. Crystal cities that had been abandoned were being reclaimed by returning Villani families. Elder Zesh met them at the surface, his crystal body shining with joy and relief. You have saved us all, he said. How can we ever repay such a gift? By learning, Hayes replied. Learn that sometimes peaceful people need protectors. Learn that strength and gentleness can work together, and you, Captain Hayes, but will you learn from us? Hayes looked at Nim, who despite her injuries was helping other Villani understand the human equipment. We'll learn that courage doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means sacrifice. Sometimes it means being willing to give everything for others. 3 months later, the first human Villani joint station was established in orbit around the crystal world. Human ships brought protection and problem-solving skills. While Villani teachers shared their knowledge of peace and harmony, the partnership became a model for other species. Within a year, dozens of worlds had requested human protection in exchange for their own unique gifts. The galaxy discovered that diversity made them all stronger. Crystal singer Nim became an ambassador, traveling between worlds to teach the lessons learned during the plague crisis. She carried with her the knowledge that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and that the beings you fear most might be exactly the ones you need. The distress call that had begun, as a cry for help, had become something much more important. It had become the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization, one where strength protected wisdom, and wisdom guided strength. And in the deep space monitoring stations, human operators continued to listen for calls from distant worlds, ready to answer when desperate voices called out across the dark between stars.